or at least it's afternoon for us. I don't know what time you're listening to this podcast, but it's afternoon for Whitney and I. So welcome back to Let's Talk About It. Last week, our very first episode launched, and I want to thank everyone who listened or watched it. I hope that you gained some insight, at least into my story and my background and kind of why we are talking about all the things. This week, we are going to hear from my amazing co-host, Whitney Hunt, and she is going to tell her story. So we're doing this purposely the first 2 episodes so that everyone gets to know us and why this podcast is super important to us to get out to everybody. And so let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
Whitney.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you feeling today?
A little on edge, but it's normal, I guess.
I know. It's going to be a hard conversation today, isn't it?
Very hard, because I found things out and that put me a little more on edge past what I already was. And so I got to tread a little lightly today, but from what I was anticipating, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
Start from the beginning.
Oh, right from the beginning. So my story has kind of 2 parts. Okay. So I'll start with me personally. Okay. To kind of give a quick background, I think, as to where this all started was right from childhood. It was half and half. It was good. And it was hell. It was absolute hell. So it was me. I have an older sister, my mom, and my father. And I hate saying that word, so bear with me on that. We grew up in a very toxic and abusive environment, being around my father. I don't think he ever wanted us. Actually, he quoted to us that we were mistakes, but that's his fault. We had to grow up very quickly, being very young. This is probably from age 6 to the time they got divorced. So 6 to 13-ish, 5 to 13-ish, from what I can remember. So me and my sister grew up very quickly. My mom was working, he worked, whatever. But the difference being from him working and my mom working, was my mom was working to try to support us. He worked to avoid us. So yeah, we learned very, very quick to become adults. And I don't think no kid that young should ever be in that position. But we did. We made it work for us, We terrorized each other as siblings and, made the best out of it. But on the other hand, we also learned that we could not be around him, look at him, talk to him anytime he got mad, and heaven help you if you're in the crossfire. Because that, for example, when I say crossfire, is, I think I was about 6 or 7, and being a kid, I made some chocolate milk, and I was like, I'm gonna put this in the freezer and try and make a Frosty or something, I was, I don't know, I was a kid, I didn't know any better. So I put it in the freezer. He went into the kitchen, opened the freezer door, the glass fell out of the door. It was an accident. My sister and I went out to the kitchen to see what happened. And unfortunately, we were in the crossfire of objects being thrown. And both of us got hit by those objects. Yeah, so...
that must have been terrifying.
It was. But so, like I said, we learned real quick, it became a game. It was, we stayed out of the same room, we just stayed away as much as possible. You'd try not to say something to him or say anything around him that would upset him. You could even make jokes toward him. And I don't know if this is something that my sister would want me to say or not. I don't think she would mind, but as simple as this was, we were coming out of a store and she needed to tie her shoe. So she asked him to hold her purse. Well, there was an episode of, was it King of the Hill at the time?
Okay.
Where, what was his name, Bobby?
Yeah.
Took karate and it ended up being a women's defense class. And in that episode, they were teaching him how to yell, "That's my purse, I don't know you," to get away from whoever was trying to rob or steal him or whatever. So anyway, because that episode just come out, my sister handed her purse to my dad, and she bent down, tied her shoe, stood up, and said that very loudly in the parking lot, "That's my purse, I don't know you," as a joke.
Uh-huh.
He knew what the joke was. He knew what the episode was. And he grabbed her up by her neck because she made a joke. I mean, there were a lot of scenarios like that. So there was just no being around him. We didn't like being around him. And like I said, I'm only touching a very small part of the story because I have to at this point. But I will let people fill in the blanks of what else could have happened. Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of my sister or my mom of what happened with them. That's their story to tell. But because of that, I feel I took on a very protective role at an early age, because when he got mad and things happened, I would try to step in and defend them. There were situations that occurred. I will not explain what happened, but things occurred. And it was in protection of them because I did not like what he did or said at that point. At some points he would pick favorites. Today you're the good child, tomorrow you're the good child. By the time we got older, we had moved houses, and it just got worse from there. We got to a point where, we were in our bedrooms, and if he was in the living room at 9 o'clock on the dot, he would go to the bedroom and we would come out. It was just big game at that point. So that was kind of the childhood I grew up with around him. My mom was great. She did everything possible for us. She was the mother, she was the father, everything. And I hate it because to this day she still questions if she made the right move. And we always tell her, yes, you did. I don't know why you would consider that you didn't, but you did. You never influenced us in any way. We made those choices. You gave us the option of, do you want to talk to him? Do you want to be around him? Whatever. She never said, no, you can never do that. She never did that. So leading up to about when I was 13, so I had my grandfather in the mix. This kind of plays a part. So my mom's dad, he ended up in the hospital one night. And this is just before they got divorced. So me, my mom, and sister went up to visit him. My grandfather was the father figure in my life. Okay, I was very close with him. He was the funniest person in the world, and yet wouldn't take BS. It's like if I got a tattoo, he'd be like, "Why the hell did you get a tattoo?" You're. But then I turn around and compliment it. He was that guy. So I was very close with my grandfather, and he being the father figure. Actually, he was the guy that also picked out my name when I was born.
Wow.
So, we went up and saw him. We left about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. About a half hour after we got home, my mom got a call.
It's okay. Take your time.
She got a call and had to go back up to the hospital. By the time she got there, he had passed away. When I found out about that, and I kind of knew before she even got back home, that's what happened. After I found out he passed away, I held on to so much regret from my last words to him. And it took me a good 18 years to get past it. As I was walking out that hospital room, I said to him, the next time I want to see you is out of here. And of course, the next time I saw him was in a funeral home. So I held on to a lot of guilt and a lot of regret. I knew it wasn't the worst thing to say,
No.
but I wish I would have said something different. And then about 18 years later, I had a dream with him in it. It was the one and only dream I've had of him. And we were sitting in his house. He went into the other room, and I went to check on him. And very vividly, I can see him standing there talking to me. And he opened the door and just said, "I'm okay."
Aw.
And ever since then, I was just kind of relieved with what happened. But that took me about 18 years to get past that. So that was a big portion of, living with what I felt as that guilt of those words and losing somebody that close to me at a young age. And I wish I would have had more time with him.
How old were you?
I was 13.
13 when he passed away.
We're actually going on 20. He passed away in 2003, so we're going on 21 years next week that he passed. So
That's still hard, isn't it?
it's very hard.
Yeah.
It is very hard. I wish he was here with us today because he would have helped us through a lot. So having that happen, and then maybe half a year after that, I think, give or take, is when my mom decided to leave my dad. So the divorce happened. Me and my sister both agreed on it. We were like, yes. My mom started the divorce process. We moved out of the house. We moved in with my grandma at the time. Court battles, obviously. They had to deal with all that arrangement, and because at the time, now I'm 14, my sister was of age, so she's an adult now, so I was the only minor. And this is what I think really threw me during the divorce was the courts didn't want to hear what I had to say because they wanted to go for shared custody. And I didn't want that at all. And they just didn't want to listen. They didn't want to talk to me. They didn't care. If they would have listened to me, if they would have talked to me, they would have never granted it. But they didn't want to. They flat out said no. So that hurt. That hurt a lot. That upset me. So they were still going through the battle of waiting for the decision. I was at the zoo with my family and my cousins that had come up out of town. And my mom got a phone call from her lawyer. And she said they granted him shared custody. I broke down. I was hurt, mad, scared.
Mhm.
So, how am I supposed to handle that at 14?
Right.
I don't want to be around this person. I'm scared. I don't, what's going to happen to me when I don't have anybody else around me? Uh, Thankfully, he never pushed to want to see me, and I never said anything. So,
Hmm.
thankfully, that never happened. But I was very scared about it. So, after that, we thought we were getting our lives back together, starting new. We found a condo, moved into that. I was finishing off high school. Uh, and it was actually the best few years we've had in a long time, or ever. And then we found out that we were going to be kicked out of the condo. And we're like, why? Well, that makes no sense. Discovering that he stopped paying my mom. Well, that went back into a court battle. So because of him, we got kicked out of our place.
Oh, no.
So that court battle happened. We got kicked out. Ended up moving back in with my grandma. And that was supposed to be for a short time, but it turned into a longer amount of time due to her health. But it was also very toxic to live with her, unfortunately. We didn't get along. It was hard to be around her. All of us got affected. And at this point, by the time we moved back in with her, I had started college. So now I'm in adulthood and trying to figure out, how do I deal with all this? How do I deal with all this pain and hate that I have? I had started drinking at an early age, which I do not condone, but I did. And then by the time I became 21, the drinking got worse. It became a vice. I was pushing borderline alcoholic. I was going out with a group of friends, Trevor being one of them, almost every night to a bar. Got into a few scenarios that I do regret because I was, under the influence. But I used drinking as a vice to stop the pain at that moment. Obviously didn't. Even though I was of age, I'd still kind of like sneak alcohol around. So yeah, that got pretty bad. And my anger became worse. I pretty much grew up with anger issues. I don't know if you want to say that's because of my father or what. And I've never hid that. I'm very open about that. I've always had anger issues. And living at my grandma's was making it worse. There was always fights. There was always, we were yelling at each other. It was just nonstop bickering. It was just negative, complete negative, which made my mental state worse. So in between all this, I got into a relationship with somebody when I was in college. That was a toxic relationship. They knew how to push my buttons. They liked seeing me angry. And finally I said, I'm done. So that didn't help any, going through all that. Not long after that relationship ended, I met somebody else. And it was actually somebody that was connected to my group of friends. So we were all one big group, that would hang out. Unfortunately, from the start of that, it was toxic. There was half of it was a little uncontrollable out of both of our hands. The other half was a family feud. When that happened, it hurt me a lot because my family is very important to me, and I want them to get along with whomever I'm with or my friends, and vice versa. So I think the breaking point for me with that was I was a producer for a shoot, a big event, and we were on location. Person I was with showed up, that my family showed up, and they were ignoring each other. So I'm kind of sitting there going, this is ridiculous. At this point, my head was done. It was just done. So I'm looking back and forth going, this is ridiculous. This shouldn't be like this. So I made the stupid move, and I shouldn't have, but I did, of pulling both of them aside while I'm at work and said, talk this out. Well, that blew up right in my face. I kicked everybody out. I told them to leave. I have a job to do. And at that point, I broke. And I made a very, very stupid move that I even regret to this day. That should have never happened. And I think at that point is when I fully mentally broke. And I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. That incident happened, I think it was June or July of 2016. Which leads me up to Thanksgiving Day, 2016. I was with my family. I had the person I was with over, but I wasn't there. I was there physically. Everything else I wasn't. I stayed in my room. I don't think I had any thoughts in my head. I didn't have any emotion. And I guess the best way to describe that is if you were to close your eyes and pretend you're walking through a forest in the middle of the night, pitch black out, no lights, and you come across a well, and you look down that well, and it's all black, and all of a sudden you're falling headfirst down that well, and you're falling, and you don't see anything but black, and you're waiting to hit that bottom, but you don't. You're just falling into that darkness. That's what my head felt like. I was waiting to hit that bottom. So because that's where I was mentally, I got bitched out by the person I was with because I was not interacting. They got up and left. Okay. I had no emotion. I didn't care at the time. Fine. So from Thanksgiving Day to the end of December, I honestly couldn't tell you what happened. I could try as hard as I could. I don't know what happened. I was gone. Next thing I do know is I was sitting in front of my doctor telling him I was done. Done. Had a big discussion, and they ended up putting me on some medication.
So I want to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, please.
So at this point, I mean, you say you're done, and you're telling the doctor this. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I mean, were you thinking of killing yourself? Was this like a suicide ideation thing? Did he ask you about that? Did he say the words? Like, I mean,
Um, yes. He did not. Did he actually straight up ask me about that? I think he did. But Thanksgiving Day was the day I chose to give up on my life. I I didn't care who was around me. I didn't care what I had. I was done, and I essentially chose to give that up. So, I had a method. I'm not gonna say what, but I I did, and that's what it was gonna be. I just felt like I didn't need to be there anymore. So, in talking with my doctor and kind of explaining to him all this, and him choosing to try this medication with me, and I was like, oh, can't hurt. I mean, what else is it gonna do? Can't get any worse than this. Um, from the very first pill I took, it was gonna bring me back if I liked it or not. And it did. I was going down that well, and right before I hit that bottom, right, I saw it. I saw the bottom. And it was right before I hit that. I came right back up from one pill. And I think that's probably the only thing that fully saved my life was that one pill.
so I want to also acknowledge while you are in the throes of darkness and really not sure you even want to keep going with life, I want you to take some credit for seeking help. I mean, even though you are literally looking into the darkest well possible, you went to a doctor. Okay, so I want to acknowledge and give you some credit. I want you to think about that. Like, that's super, super brave, Whitney. Like to do that, to take those steps
Mhm.
and look for help. And I'm grateful to the doctor to sitting and listening to you and, working with you and giving you some medication. And whether it was medication or your almost maybe will to live, maybe a combination thereof. I just I want to sit there for just a second. I want you to take some credit for being so brave.
Thank you. I mean, it's weird because I don't even know how that day even became that day. No idea. All I know is all of a sudden I'm sitting there talking to him. It was so weird. It's very weird. It's a very weird feeling. But yeah, no, that medication I think completely saved my life. Like I said, it pulled me back if I liked it or not. It did. And from that point on, I chose to fix it. And thankfully, I was only on that medication for a small period of time. So I'm no longer on medication. I haven't been for, what, 7, 8 years? So all that you see today is my own work. Now, I'm not saying that, some people need a short amount of time on medication, if at all, or, for the rest of their lives to help it. Nothing's wrong with that. But thankfully, I didn't have to. I just was, I'm like, no, I'm not doing this again. I'm not. I have too many people in my life that, I can't hurt. because it will hurt them. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to find my way to resolve, pain, hate, whatever it may be, sadness. I was going to find a way to fix it in a different way than what I was handling it. If I got angry, my hand was going into a brick wall. I learned the hard way on that one several times.
That hurts.
It hurts, yeah. I actually still got a scar from it. So I turned that into boxing. I found a different outlet. Or, if I get to that point where I know I want to throw my fist into a wall, I'll go for a drive. Just blare some music, find different ways. Calm down, sort it out, fix it from there. So to this day, I still battle with it. It'll be a lifelong battle.
Absolutely will be.
There are scenarios that still come around that I will kind of beat myself up over. Kind of for instance, I was talking with somebody and found out something that I unintentionally did or said. And I didn't know about this, obviously, and I found out about it. And when I found out that I hurt this person, it destroyed me. So for a couple weeks, I beat myself up. I pulled myself away. I started going into that dark place again because I didn't know how to handle it. How dare I do that? What the is wrong with me? I no. But one thing I have learned over all these years of trying to fix this or make it better is that you need to talk. And that's what I did. Talked it out. Resolved it. So to this day, those scenarios still come up. But I find a way to make it better or try to fix it. But I'm still learning not to beat myself up over things that I unintentionally did or made a mistake over, because that's not going to get me anywhere.
Nope, that's not.
So, just simple things like, work or friendships or family, I just got to learn how to not let that go too far.
Every day is a learning curve, right?
It is.
So every day you're going to come into situations and different things that are going to challenge you.
Yeah.
And I admire you so much for figuring out how to walk through those situations, and talking about it and being communicative. And you say you beat yourself up all the time. I think as humans, we do that all the time, right? Like we just constantly beat ourselves up about, things that, I could beat myself up about, something I said to a friend 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're ridiculous that way. Like,
Yeah.
At some point we have to just realize that we did and said the best that we could at the time that we were in,
Yeah.
right? And we have to be able to let go and move forward. And I love that you have really embraced moving forward and wanting to just make things better for you and your family and kind of overcome such hardship. I didn't know your full story until just now today, and I just wow, like it's a lot. It's a lot.
And that's just the
the tip of the iceberg.
it's the bottom of the totem pole. It's just a very, very small amount of the stories that I could tell.
Which makes me just think you're just so much more amazing than just I mean, I already knew you were awesome, but I mean, just like your resilience to just move forward and how strong you are. I hate that word, but I'm going to use it, even though I hate it, but just how really strong you are as a person.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I try to be, like I said, I have a lot of good people around me now, and I don't want to take that for granted. So I don't want to hurt them, you know. So and I will say this pertaining to my father. When I was born, I ended up having to have an emergency surgery, and they didn't let my mom see me. She didn't know anything about it. And essentially, it was a life and death decision. And they went to my father and said, "You make the call." It was in his hands to say yes or no. Thankfully, he said yes. I think that was only because of my mom, but he said yes. And for a very long time, I would tell people that's the only thing I could thank him for.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, there are a lot of times where I wonder if I should thank him. Did you make that right choice? Why should I thank you for that? You should be my parent. That shouldn't have been a question. But he made it. So.
And we're so glad.
And we're here.
So kind of, I want to transition within your story a little bit to the death of your friend Trevor by suicide.
Yep. Yeah.
You knew I was going to bring it up.
Yeah.
I kind of want you to talk a little bit, as brief as you want to be or as much as you want to be, but I want to know kind of how his death affected you as well.
Yeah. So this is still very fresh to us. We just passed the 1-year anniversary. He passed away on December 26th. So Trevor, to give a little backstory with him, I knew him since high school. After high school is when we hung out the most. Like I said, we hung out almost every day. Big group of friends, going to the bars, I mean, I could tell you stories for days on end with hanging out with him. It was so comical. He was a great person to be around. He was a great brother, a great son, great friend. If you needed advice, he was right there. He didn't judge you. He tried to make the best of any situation. And unfortunately, when the person I was seeing that was in that friend group that I mentioned, when we split up, the friend group also kind of split up. But we, still individually talked to each other. I'd still talk to Trevor, all that, and they did their thing, which was fine. And unfortunately, it became a little difficult to hang out with anybody at the point after I had my car accident. I had knee surgery, and that was 2019. It took me almost a year to recover out of that, and then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So it kind of went right from one thing to another. So there was obviously a time period where I wasn't able to see Trevor, but I was still talking to him. Not too long before I found out, I had just spoke with him, and I was like, so, give me an update on what's going on, how are things? He never even hinted to anything wrong. He had a new job. He was going through his personal stuff, but it was never something that I would have been, went, there's a red flag there at all. never once in the time frame of hanging out with him since, what, we'll say 2008, to this point, did I ever once question, is he struggling that much or at all? I mean, we all go through our stuff. You know, we all have our bad days. And I figured that's kind of where he was at. You know, he just maybe had a bad day, whatever. But never once did I think anything past that. And obviously, being one of the people that have been there, I would have assumed I would have caught that. So yeah, January 2nd, I got a text from our mutual friend from that friend group. And they said, "Did you see that Trevor died?" I think at that point, I didn't believe it. Maybe you were talking about somebody else. You know, what, like, what? You're delirious. Why, you know, stop lying to me. And then I said, "What happened?" They said it was unexpected. So at this point, it was kind of starting to hit me that this did happen. And being unexpected, now your head's going, well, what happened? You know, I mean, he was a snowboarder. He was a wakeboarder, obviously, at the time in December. He would have been snowboarding. So my very first thought was, shit, he got into a snowboarding accident.
Yeah.
You know, there was another theory I had, but that was stretching. And then obviously my third thought was, did he really possibly do something to himself? But that was not even in my top thoughts. That it was, did he get into an accident? Within a day or two after finding out that he passed away, I did find out what exactly happened. And I actually saw this, and I don't know if it's the worst part or not. I saw a photo of him on Christmas Day with his family. He went home, and somewhere between him getting home from Christmas with his family that night into Tuesday, or I think it was a Tuesday, 26th, he took his own life. Obviously, just out of respect for his family, I'm not going to say what his method was, what happened. So finding that out was a bigger shock to us than just the fact that he passed away. Nobody, everybody that I talked to that was close to him, nobody knew, hinted, nothing. There was just no sign. So the memorial got scheduled, and it brought, obviously, all of us back together. You know, we all went to the memorial. They had him cremated. So before the service started, they had, you know, some of his stuff laid out with his urn on the table. And that old group of friends is now there standing all together around him. And I don't know if you want to call this a stupid quote or not, or something that I said that was stupid, but as we were standing there, I said, this is the last time all of us will be together in one room. I mean, it was hard to grasp that we were never going to be able to be around him or talk to him or see him ever again. So in a sense, he kind of brought us all back together, in that unfortunate way. So the impact of losing him and how that made me feel was a lot of different emotions. A little bit of hate. You know, why would you do it? I don't hate him, you know, at all for what he did. I knew there was a struggle there, and it just overtook him. So I do not hate him, but there was that little bit of hate, like, why would you leave us? Guilt, I should have hung out with you sooner. I should have asked you more questions, something. Um, and, obviously I've lost people close to me, my grandfather, a few other family members, but that was the first time I had anybody that close to me that committed suicide. So at the time, I didn't know how to really process it, just the hurt, the pain, sadness. We all went out after the memorial and started talking, and we're trying to come up with why. Where's the why? Especially because none of us knew any signs. So we are now tearing ourselves apart, trying to figure the why out. We came up with a whole bunch of theories from what we could all piece together from us individually talking to him and being around him. We'll never know. We'll never know.
In the end, Trevor's the only one who.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Unfortunately, he didn't leave a note or anything. But even to this day, we do still kind of ask the why. But
I think we all do, right? When you experience the death of, someone that you care about to suicide, there's always I even talked about this in my podcast, right? So like the woulda, coulda, shoulda, what signs did he exhibit that I missed? And, what if I had done this? Or like you said, what if I'd hung out with him more? What if I had done this? And I say this all the time, but it's so hard. Like we can't beat ourselves up.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't. And that survivor guilt of it will eat you alive if you focus on it too much.
Yeah.
And it's such hard work. I'm coming up on 5 years without my son, and it's taken me 5 years to get through to the point where it's not a daily beating of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to overcome that. And I think going back to, a lifelong battle, it's just, you're going to have days where you're going to question it. You're never just going to up and get over it, so I don't know. But yeah, it's a very weird feeling. And for anybody that is listening has, lost somebody close to them to suicide, that I'm sure they kind of understand. It's bad enough when you lose somebody in general, but it's such a different feeling when it's by their own hands.
Absolutely. It's so traumatic and tragic and just so extremely different. It's not a car accident. It's not cancer. It's not old age. It's, it's completely different. When somebody takes their own life. They're choosing to end their own life. And that's a very different concept for us to wrap our head around.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So yeah, that's, in a very short summary, kind of my story. I actually, because of all that, and once I got to a point in my life where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm not like that. I permanently tattooed on my arm a reminder.
What is it?
So it's a semicolon. It's actually more than that. It's this way.
Can you,
so
for those of you who are listening, and not actually watching the video, talk us through it.
Okay, so what it is a half a sleeve. It's a film reel, and most people either don't know the meaning of what the tattoo is, or they just assume it's because of my career, because obviously I'm a videographer, I work in it. So, well, obviously, yes, it does have a part to do with my career, but the deeper meaning behind it is at the very end of the film reel, and I know I'll take a photo of it and put it up, but right here at the very end of that last frame is a semicolon. And what does a semicolon mean, Chris?
A semicolon means that your story is not over.
Exactly. And being in that last frame is telling me my story is not done.
I love that.
So it is a daily reminder
I absolutely.
to myself that I'm not done.
Nope. Your story's not over.
So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
like I said, that in a very short summary, that's where I ended up and where I am now. I will fight every single day.
Well, I am so grateful to you for sharing what I know was very, very hard. I know you were kind of dreading this podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
And telling your story because it's super vulnerable, right?
It is.
You're putting your whole self out to the world.
Yeah, this is actually the first time I've actually told pretty much the whole story publicly. You know, people close to me do know. But yeah, that's the first time I've actually said it for everybody to hear.
Well,
and I'm not ashamed of it in a, you know,
Nor
in
should
that,
you be.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of that I wanted to say that I found out I couldn't. I had to tread a little lightly due to circumstances. But like I said, you know, kind of fill in the rest of it. But yeah, that's the first time I've said it publicly. And,
Wow.
you know.
Well, thank you for sharing it here.
You're welcome.
Our space.
Hopefully it touches somebody and helps them
Undoubtedly
work through some of their stuff. And I mean, we all find our own way to work on things. And that's what I did. You know, I didn't go to a therapist. Granted, I have seen a therapist. Didn't work out. I actually scared him.
It's okay.
I don't know why.
Therapy doesn't work for everybody.
Right. Don't know why I scared the therapist, but I did. But, you know, I found my own way of helping me, and it works. So.
Well, I want to say thank you for giving others hope.
Okay.
Because you've been through a lot of trauma your whole life. And to come out kind of the other side, I mean, you know, you were in the darkest of dark places and you were brave enough to seek help and you have pushed through and you're constantly pushing every day. I know you are. And thank you for giving all of our listeners who are also probably struggling with something, the hope to push through to the other side. So.
Well, thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Whitney. I so appreciate it. I want to also just kind of disclaim, I know that we do talk a lot about very triggering topics here. Also, please note that Whitney and I are just real people, just talking about all the things. We have no certifications. We are not therapists. We are not doctors. And we're just here just talking real and just hoping that you find some hope and some inspiration from what we have to say and what from our future guests have to say as well. So that's all we have, I guess, for today, right?
I think so.
All right. Well, thank you again, Whitney. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Catch you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye.